Hello, I'm artist and author Mark Heine from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my unique technique for finishing a painting. And when I say finishing, I mean I use a process that's not a typical varnish, and it has a lot of advantages over commercially available varnishes. Um, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Um, this painting here, I finished about a month ago, I guess it was. And uh, I've given it a full month to dry. That's normally longer than my water soluble oils take. I use Winsor Newton artisan water soluble oils. These guys here. And typically they dry a little bit faster than traditional oils, which I like. And if I don't like the drying speed, I can slow the drying speed with a retarder. This is water mixable stand oil. So basically, it's linseed oil that's been left to stand. That's why they call it stand oil. So it thickens, and this one has an emulsifying agent that makes it compatible with the water soluble oils, which are basically oil paint with a emulsifying agent in them, which allows you to clean the brushes with water. I never really mix with water. I wash with water. I mix with mediums. And stand oil, you can also get additives that will accelerate the drying time, but I never use those. I just haven't had any need for them. I only add stand oil, which delays the drying time. And the reason I add stand oil sometimes is that when I'm working on a large area, I like to work ala prima, so I like to have the edges workable. And in order to have that, when I'm painting one area in and it butts up against another area, that other area has to still be wet for me to be able to soften the line between the two. I play a lot with soft focus and sharp focus line work. And so by adding stand oil and also by working the oil, if you're doing like a large area and you're doing a lot of blending, you can bring the oil to the surface of the artwork. And quite often what happens, well, actually, and another thing too is I tend to use Payne's gray more than black if I'm putting in a dark area, and I could tint the Payne's gray one way or the other depending on what the adjacent color is. So Payne's gray, as it happens, dries fastest of all the water soluble oils, and the slowest drying is titanium white, and the rest are somewhere in between. So I like to start with my darks first to establish my dark values. And in this case, I'm using Payne's gray. So I'm putting on the color that dries the quickest, which is the opposite to what I need. I need it to stay wet longer, so that when I get things butting up to it, those edges are wet. So I use water mixable stand oil to delay the drying time of Payne's gray. So I've got it in this drop bottle here because as I'm working, I just put a couple of drops into the paint I'm mixing up, and it's very easy to use, and I don't contaminate it by dipping a brush in to pick it up out of a jar or out of a cup. So the problem though with water mixable stand oil is that it tends to make certain things shiny. And also, too, like I said, when you're working a large area, you can get the oil coming up, and that makes things shiny too. So you wind up with Payne's gray, you wind up with the areas that are the darkest part of your painting being shiny. And so, you're getting light reflecting off the darkest parts, and it really messes with your values. Your darkest areas are now reflecting light back at you, so it can be a real annoying thing. But even more annoying is when the painting dries, you're going to have areas that are shiny and areas that are flat, and you put that up on a wall, and any light that's on an angle to it is going to show all that. So it's a nasty mess. And And the process that I use with this product here, this is Wax Medium. The brand is Gamblin Wax Medium, and it's thick. It's like paste wax. So I kind of have to thin that out. But my process is to take some of that Wax Medium, put it in a tub, and mix it with with odorless mineral spirits because it's an oil-based product. And the Wax Medium is a painting medium, so it's a beeswax with some other additives, and it's also a product that people use to add to their paint as they're actually applying paint. So it's actually a painting medium, not a varnish. And so I take that Wax medium, I mix it with a little bit of odorless mineral spirits, and I can also tint it. Now I'm going to be tinting it today because I've got this painting and I want to kind of add an overall glow of a particular color. The reason one of the nice things about tinting is that in a painting where you've got a bunch of different areas that are unrelated, you can get this color isolation effect happening, where you've got this particular color happening in one area of the painting and nowhere else. And so by flowing a tinted medium over the entire painting, you can create a harmonious kind of vibe, because that color incorporates into every single color on the canvas, and it can join the painting together, the various segments of the painting together. So the waterless or with the Wax medium, I thin it down. I add a little bit of paint. Today I'm going to be adding this one here, which is raw sienna. I quite often tint with raw sienna because it's a translucent medium. The oil paint is quite translucent. If you use a really heavy opaque oil paint, you can create a fog effect on the painting. And I've tried blues and things, and believe me, you can run into trouble with that. So I've done the raw sienna before, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. So I'm going to be mixing that up. Now, one of the advantages of Wax medium is that if you're painting in a traditional oil painting sense, and a lot of recommendations from the manufacturers of existing varnishes is that you wait 6 to 8 months to apply the varnish, and that's because the oil paint has to be completely dry before you seal it in. If you're a professional artist and you're having a show in 6 to 8 months, that's just too much time. So with this process, I can varnish. Like I said, this painting has been drying for a month, but I can varnish usually within a couple of weeks if I haven't used too much of the stand oil. And so in a couple of weeks, I can have this varnished and ready to show, which is a lot different than 6 to 9 months away. So when I apply the Wax medium, what happens is that it works as a matting agent. It makes the entire painting very, very flat. Now, on my technique I don't know if you've seen my other videos, but I tend to work with an underlying texture of gesso applied with a palette knife to give me some base texture to paint on. And that goes right on top of the canvas, even before I put the ground color down. So there's a fair amount of texture happening. Now, the matting agent, what that will do, the Wax medium will make everything matte. And I put it on and let it dry for a day. You don't want to let it dry for too much more than a day. A day will dry it out just fine. Any more than a day, and you can't buff it. And that's the secret of this Wax medium. When you apply it, you let it dry for a day. The whole thing is flat. It's at that point you break out your camera, you set it up in the copy stand. I have a copy stand system set up in my studio, so that's one of the lights for it back here. This double mount light is a halogen, and I've got another one over on that corner, and they're both at 45 degrees for the drawing table. And I'll be demonstrating the use of that. But that's the perfect time to photograph your work when everything is flat, especially on large works with texture, because all this texture, if the canvas is shiny, will show up in the photograph. And you don't want that, especially if you want to make reproductions and things. You don't want to show too much of that texture. And believe me, it can take a long time to weed it all out in Photoshop if you have to. So you take the photograph of the varnish painting, and then a day later, after you finish photographing it, check the photographs to make sure that they are good and what you want before you do this next step. Now, this is a shoe polishing brush, and coal wax medium is a wax. So after I photograph the piece, then I come in and I can buff this coal wax medium to an even finish. And depending on how long I buff, the shinier the surface will be. Now, if your painting is going into an area where there's a window adjacent, you don't want a super shiny painting because no one will ever see it. So I like to get a finish that's kind of like a semi-gloss, or I'm not even sure what the term would be, a tiny bit of sheen, but most of all, I want it overall even. I don't want shiny spots. And so by buffing it, and also you can apply a few layers of that coal wax medium to build up a heavier coat of it, and then you can buff it to a real quite a shine if you want that effect. So you can adjust the finish of the painting with how much you buff the painting. The other big advantage to coal wax medium is that it's a painting medium. So you can paint into it. So say a month later, you're looking at the painting going, you just don't like this stupid seagull sitting here. It's just really thrown me off. If you want to change that, well, you can paint right over the coal wax medium because it is a painting medium. And you can change the painting. And then once that area is dry, you can do another flood coat of the coal wax medium over the whole canvas, and you won't be able to tell the difference. So it's a very workable type of system. So I'm going to mix up some of this coal wax medium. I'm going to actually turn off the camera, and because it takes about 15 minutes of boring mixing, because you want to make sure you get all that raw sienna mixed up, or else you're going to wind up with streaks of raw sienna across your work. So I'm going to mix up the medium, and we'll come back and I'll show you the application process. And then once it's dry, I'll do another video that shows the polishing process. So I'll be right back. Hello, I'm back again after my few minutes of blending. So what I've done with this coal wax medium, and I access it with a palette knife. And I'll give you an idea of how dense it is when it comes out of the can. It's very thick. It's similar to those who, if you flash back to 1960s, it looks like paste floor wax. I remember as a kid. So it's quite thick. It smells like beeswax. So what I've done is I've taken some of that and I've mixed it in a tub, and I've added in some raw sienna. I put this raw sienna out on a little sacrificial palette there, and I blended it together with a ratty old utility brush. And I want to make sure that I've taken out all of the lumps of raw sienna. So it has to be nice and smooth. It takes quite a bit of time to make sure that you don't have lumps of raw sienna, because if you have lumps of raw sienna, you'll get these strips of color like a brushstroke running across your canvas. And that can happen, but you don't want it. You want to minimize it. You can fix it, but you don't really want to encourage it. So you can see the little specks of raw sienna as you're mixing, as you're blending. I'm going to just switch over. Oh, before I switch over to the other camera and start applying, I wanted to show you Ziploc bag. that's fresh out of the freezer. This particular Ziploc bag has been living in my freezer for about 6 years, something like that. And inside is a kind of a small, soft roller, fibrous roller, and also my wax application brush, which is very sticky. Um, and this is they call it a hake brush. It's more of a watercolor brush than anything else. And it's a very soft brush made with rabbit fur. And this particular brush I've been using, like I said, for years, which is good. If you get a new one and you try this, you're going to wind up with lots of little hairs stuck into the wax. So make sure you do your best to try and weed out, just grab the brush and weed out any hairs that aren't really well stuck. And you will get hairs that happen, and you can just go in and lift them off with a use of a an X-Acto knife or something, and just get the hair out and lift it off, and then apply the wax over top. So you just have to keep an eye on those hairs. You can take them out afterwards too, when you before you start buffing. And so I keep this brush and this roller, and the roller I use for background. So I apply the coal wax medium with the soft brush, and then I'll back roll it with a roller to take out any kind of excess buildup or any kind of stroke. I want it as flat and even as possible. So I'm going to switch cameras over here to the drawing table camera. There we go. Okay, so here's the painting here. This I haven't officially named yet. I think I might call it a Echo of Sirens. Not really sure what you would call a gathering of sirens, like a parliament of owl or a murder of crows. This is a gathering of sirens. So I thought echo is kind of fun. But this painting is actually an homage to an old painting that I found online, actually, just looking through siren and mythology related artwork. And it was a sort of a similar feeling with these sirens gathered on a rock. But this particular rock, actually, this particular outcrop, comes from Village Island on the west coast of Vancouver Island, where the siren story, part of the siren story, is based. And so that actual rock formation is on the beach at the site of Village Island, where the First Nations encampment was for thousands of years. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead now. The first step you want to do before you apply the wax is that this thing has been sitting in my studio for a month and it's been sticky. So I want to make sure that I give it a really good kind of sweep over with a soft brush. This is just an eraser crumb brush from a graphic store. And I want to make sure that I get as much of the fur and whatever's been floating around in the studio. In the wintertime, the forced air heating can cause a lot of dust. So you want to try and brush off as much of that as you can. Any hairs and things that have gotten stuck in the wet foil as it's drying. So I'll give it a good brush like that. And then we'll take the tinted, oh, there's some sienna there. So now I've got tinted color on this brush. Before I put it back in the freezer, I'll wipe it clean. So, because the next time I do a painting, I may not want tinted varnish. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. In this particular case, I thought, the color scheme on this painting is kind of cool, and I think it would be fun to try tinted varnish on it. So here we go. I've mixed up the varnish, and I'm just going to start applying it. I'm going to go one side across to the other. One thing about the Wax Varnish or Wax Medium is you want to mix it up fresh each time. I've left some over before, and it tends to separate, and then it can cause kind of a cloudy effect on the work. So next time you use it, so I tend to mix fresh coax medium each time, so I don't have any of that separation. But you can actually you can deal with that separation, but it's a hassle. You can deal with it in the buffing stage. So just want a nice even coat, make sure everything is covered. Because of all the texture in the canvas, I like to go up and down and side to side to make sure that I'm getting everything covered. I'll move across the painting in strips. Something stuck in there, just pick it out. In there. Third layer here. Horizon. It doesn't look very even, but it'll get there with the roller. This yellow raw sienna is kind of a yellowish, warm yellowish tone, and it kind of adds just a cast of that warm color, a cast of that warm color over the entire painting. Yeah, you want to make sure that your painting is dry before you do this. I've done it one time. I was doing a demonstration for a class, and I was doing a class over 2 weeks. So I wanted to show them the waxing technique, and I applied the wax when the demo painting was not dry, and so the wax, of course, blended with the existing paint, and the overall end result was kind of cool. So yeah, it's one of those mistakes that kind of made me think in a different way about uh, applying the varnish, and perhaps that's an experimental technique that can be explored in the future, where I'm blending the medium into a painting that's not completely dry. So it's just another opportunity to try something new and keep experimenting. I worked out the amount of varnish I need pretty accurately. I think it was pretty much a guess as to how much I need, and I've got it pretty much right. So I'm not going to be wasting a lot of wax medium. Yeah, right down to the very end here. Perfect. So it's a pretty uneven coat of wax medium. Play with it, drag the brush the surface just to try and level it out a bit. It starts to dry really quickly, so it's quite surprising how fast it starts to set up. So the top of this painting has already started to set up a little bit. Just want to make it nice and even. All right, well, that's certainly got a nice coat over the entire surface. Now, I want to make the roller start to back roll. So this is basically a dry roller. Probably has some wax left on it from previous applications. I'm rolling it over, just back rolling it very gently. So you get the idea. I'll just keep doing this back and forth for a while, up and down the painting. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll do a horizontal stroke with the brush, with the roller for a while, and then I'll mix that up and go with vertical strokes, just to make sure I'm not creating bands of different amounts. So you can do the vertical stroke as well, and this just levels out the surface and makes everything even. So the rest of it is just time, getting it nice and flat and even. And so there's no point continuing on the video here because that's just going to be more of the same. There we go. So we're back on the other camera here. So so that's the process with cold wax medium. That's the application process. I don't know if you could see based on the color range of this little webcam, but it's dramatically altered the overall tone of the painting, which I wanted. It's definitely warmed up the colors. The skin tones are warmer, and of course they relate to the rest of the painting. So it's overall quite changed, and I wanted that. I put a lot of raw sienna in there because I wanted quite a dramatic shift in the overall color scheme. So so that's the process. Wet. Tomorrow I'm going to photograph it, and I'll do a video on that, and then I will show you the buffing to bring the surface to a sheen. And I've done that before in demonstrations because I'll do one side buffed and I'll leave the other side flat, and then I'll move the camera around so you can see the difference in that the buffing makes. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for tomorrow. We'll finish it up and do the coffee stand. So take care.